Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and it's that time of week where my good friend, X-Men historian, Marvel aficionado, Dok, shows up when we talk everything X-Men. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. I love talking X-Men on this fine morning.
Yeah, it was a great week. We had 4 new releases as far as the comic books go. Some, I don't know if it's instant classic, but one of those stories was absolutely phenomenal. We also have some very interesting news as far as the future of Dawn of X, and we're going to start there. Marvel Comics released a trailer for their upcoming Wolverine series from Ben Percy and Andy Kubert and Victor Bogdanovich. Doc, what do you think of the trailer?
I thought it was actually kind of cool. I'm not usually a fan of a lot of these trailers, but I think this one actually kind of sold me on it. I wasn't entirely sold on this book until now. I got a little sarcastic in my brain while watching it, but it was a good trailer. I'm actually looking forward to this book. They seem to, I think the only thing to keep in mind is don't ever put Jordan White on camera, Marvel. Jesus Christ, that man is like an instant sales void.
Between the mustache and the ukulele, only the hat. Well, not always the hat, but if he's got the hat, it's even worse.
I mean, can't you send him back to his haberdashery or, I don't know, Curiosities Emporium?
Absolutely. Let's get him somewhere off camera, because the Legion of Doofuses shouldn't be front and center when you're trying to entice new readers and maybe get some of those lapsed readers to come back for this Wolverine series.
Exactly, because Ben Percy was in there and he was selling the crap out of it. He was just a normie that's like, I love Wolverine. He's a badass. How does a badass deal with utopia? And will it last for him? I mean, that dude that was a decent sales pitch. I mean, we know the answer is no. Come on, it's Wolverine. You see him just hanging out all the time, and that's going to get boring real quick.
Yeah, I guess they're going to explore whether or not Wolverine in the end can be happy. I think Wolverine can be happy, but it's in doses.
Exactly. Wolverine's he's a Ronin. He's a soldier. He needs a battle.
All right, so the other big one was we finally got a preview for the upcoming giant-size X-Men, Jean Grey, Emma Frost from Jonathan Hickman, with art from Russell Dauterman. I got to be honest, I'm not the biggest Russell Dauterman fan. He's a good artist, but man, did he really nail that first page that they show with the whole team where you got Cyclops. I think Storm is in there with them as well, and then I just blew me away, even without the colors.
Yeah, you know what? I do think he's kind of a pretty good artist. I like him. He's a little stiff, but it's still good. I'm not the biggest fan, but it is still good. That opening shot, I think that might be supposed to be a cover or something. I don't know. It because the way that they cover. Oh, it isn't. It's
no. The colored picture is the cover itself.
Oh, okay. But you know what? It's good. Although I'm a little confused why he's still putting Jean in her X-Men Red costume when she's been in her Marvel Girl costume since House of X, Powers of X. So why is she suddenly back in her X-Men Red costume? I mean, I can't speak for you, but any way that I can avoid referencing X-Men Red, I would.
Well, Tevi is going to have issues with you, but I am in agreement, and I do like her Marvel girl outfit. He is a bit of a newcomer to Marvel Comics and the comics industry in general, but I think he's doing pretty good. But I got to ask you, Doc, what the hell's up with this tree?
I don't have the slightest goddamn clue. It's a weird looking tree. I don't remember this tree. If this is an important tree, I've entirely forgotten about it. And also it kind of looks like a tree growing out of a giant penis, and it's kind of creeping me out. It is not a normal looking tree.
What's the have you seen the symbol that's floating above it?
No, I couldn't really make that out because I looked at when I was checking out the preview pages, I was doing it on my phone, so it's not really the best for it. So
it kind of looks like a chevron, but I believe it's supposed to be more like of an angelic figure.
Could be. I mean, it could be them, leaning towards or that the tree is somehow symbolic, and that maybe Xavier is the giant dick trunk.
I don't think so, but in the third page, it's clear that the symbol that's hovering above the tree is causing like some type, not really a tornado, but some type of severe weather event where it's very windy, it's kicking up dust, it looks very dangerous. So that should be interesting.
It should be. I have a sneaking suspicion, though, that this whole thing is these previews are taking place in the on the psychic plane, or on the mystic plane, because just a weird feeling that this feels more like symbolism than an actual place.
All right. Interesting theories. We've talked about, some of the preview out, they put a trailer out for Wolverine. We got some preview art for giant size X-Men. Very exciting. But this was a huge week for X-Men. It's the first week of the year 2020 where we got 4 issues of the Dawn of X. X-Men number 5, X-Force number 6, New Mutants number 6, and the finale of Fallen Angels number 6. Because, we know Brian Edward Hill is going on a hiatus because he's got some Hollywood work. What stood out for you among these issues?
X-Men by far. And, as somebody that's hasn't really been, I've thought it was okay to this point. This was the first issue that I felt really was a actual continuation of what Hickman was doing on House of X, Powers of X. This felt like, oh, cool. We're finally going to start dealing with that stuff after 4 issues of, in my opinion, kind of filler.
And it wasn't just it was great getting the art from R.B.Silva and Marte Gracia back. They were the art team from Powers of 10, but it felt like going back to something you really enjoyed, and I think Hickman knocked it out of the park. In my opinion, this is the best issue of Dawn of X so far.
Oh, absolutely. It's easily the best issue. It feels like there's actual stakes. They're not just doing the typical, we'll kill somebody to have minor shock value for 10 seconds until you realize, oh, wait, we'll just regenerate them in the next issue, which is something that I think the whole relaunch has suffered from, at least to this point. This one felt like, oh, cool, we have some stakes. We don't know what's going on. There's actual risk. It's a good callback to a rather dangerous group of foes that the X-Men had, probably 10, 12 years ago in the Children of the Vault. It's great. I really enjoyed this issue.
It was a nice return to form, talking about post-humanity and the threat that it actually represents towards mutants. Then we also learned a bit more about the resurrection process with the medical readout on Sync. The 5 are accidentally bringing these mutants back, improved physically, but mentally they're a little bit fractured. He had trouble readapting, and they've had to change up some of their practices, where when they bring mutants back, they bring them back with fellow mutants they were with and died around the same time, because it helps with the transition back. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, because otherwise you're willingly putting all these characters into a Captain America like Man Out of Time situation. Now, obviously not to the same scale. They haven't been on ice for 70 years, but even 5 years, you wake up. It's like being a coma patient. You wake up and you're like, what in the hell happened? But if you got a bunch of other people around, that makes sense from a from a practical standpoint of if they were, so you have a doctor that's actually acting like a doctor, trying to figure out what's the easiest way to make these people's transition. And if it's just, well, we'll bring back people that died around the same time as them and that they knew, that works. I mean, that makes sense. And that's an interesting thing because it's something that nobody would have thought about initially, and them not thinking of it initially, having some problems. And I want to see what some of the fallout from some of those problems are. Lord only knows what Sync's powers could do. Could he mimic everyone's powers kind of like a rogue? Could he copy them and then amplify them and combine them into one person doing all of this work? Could he be a one person version of the Five? Nobody knows yet.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I just love that issue. Another thing I wanted to talk about was Brian Hill's final issue of Fallen Angels. He says it's coming back. I personally have doubts. As far as I'm concerned, the series was derailed a bit by the artwork. I didn't really like it, and it feels like it limped to the finish line. In this issue, it definitely wasn't my favorite, but there is one standout, phenomenal moment where Mr. Sinister gets his hands on Overclock. What did you think about that, buddy?
I think that's awesome, and I think it's going to be kind of a key in his creation of the Chimeras. I don't know why, but that would make sense to me. He's responsible for the Chimeras. Now he has Overclock. I don't know how it would work, but it could work for like the black-brained mutants or the sleeper ones. All those kind of things that, I feel like he's going to make some rather, well, to pardon the pun, sinister use of that technology. And
yeah, he's absolutely the worst person you could ever think of to get his hands on something that allows him to control people.
Yes,
and
exactly.
Access their minds.
And I think that's going to create some cool tension down the line, and hopefully somebody will actually run with the idea. Now, I am disappointed that Brian is not going to be back for a little while, at least on these. And yeah, I do think that it did limp to the finish line. I think it was often hampered by the mandate on the length of the story. This was kind of a 3-issue story that kind of got stretched into 5, in my opinion. And while I understood the whole idea of exploring, Quanon's backstory in a way that hadn't really been done before, I think it really, really suffered in the art department, because I'll be honest, half the times I couldn't tell the difference between X-23 and Psylocke.
100%.
So I didn't know who the hell was talking. And I think that really harmed the story, especially on like the close-up shots of their face.
Anytime sometimes it'd be like half of a mouth and a quarter of an eye.
Yeah, and I'd be like, I have no idea who I'm looking at here. I don't even know if it's Husk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And they didn't really do anything with Cable in this. Hopefully somebody else, the Cable solo series will pick up some of the, the things that were missing, that didn't get really addressed. Because it looked like Brian was attempting to get started with something with Cable and then just kind of abandon it because, again, he was running out of time.
Doc, so, we talked a couple of the issues of Dawn of X. The other two were New Mutants number 6 and X-Force number 6. Is there one last thing you want to say about either one of those issues before we wrap this up?
I did like the fact that even though X-Force was a fill-in artist, they did a pretty good job of keeping a very similar style to the monthly artist. So it was not, and especially in modern Marvel, they have a tendency of having a fill-in artist that is horribly jarring from
Mm-hmm.
the regular artist, and this time around it fit in pretty seamlessly. You could tell it was a different artist, but it wasn't a significantly different style, and I thought that was
Yeah,
really
Joshua
good.
Caceres got like a real kind of sketchy, gritty kind of thing going on, and I think Steven Segovia did a good job. He didn't try to mimic it, but he
Yeah,
definitely adapted his style to look
to fit that.
to fit it. And then I think the color artist Guru Effects, who assumed as a company, did a really good job uh, mimicking the color work from I think it's Dean White.
Yeah. And on the issue of New Mutants, it was another terrestrial story, and I've hated the terrestrial arc in this, but it actually while the story itself sucked, the ending of it kind of put a little bit of tarnish on the mutants, and it kind of it made you feeling kind of dirty reading it. You're like, ooh, these people are kind of shitty people. And I it was the one redeeming part of that whole terrestrial story, because the rest of it was effing terrible.
Yeah, I thought it was unreadable. I was like, I can't keep doing this. This
Yeah.
is this is messing my chi up, man. I can't take this.
Yeah. So no, that was pretty much it. Thankfully we'll be done with that. Hopefully, going forward, Ed Brisson's issues of New Mutants are something more that anyone would want to read, instead of just Ed Brisson and his glob fanboyism. Yeah, hopefully we get real Ed Brisson back, and not whoever the hell this body snatch person was that decided they loved Beak, Angel, and Glob.
Yeah, so it's terrible, Doc. All right, so that wraps up this week in X-Men. I want to thank you very much for joining me today, Doc. We talked some Wolverine trailer, giant size X-Men preview art, and we ran through the gamut of Dawn of X. Really appreciate you, buddy.
Oh, thank you, man.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.